this is my philosophy when I go about my daily routine. Is there something I can do to help somebody? Is there somebody who I can see things are not going well for them today, and create some space and have a little extra in your life so you can stop and help people. And in the end, it'll come back around and help you.
Hello, and welcome to episode 56 of the Liberland Show. I'm your host, Adam J. Carswell. Today we are joined by Roger Gietzen, the founder of Global Freedom Project. Roger, thank you for coming on the show today. Really excited for this interview for multiple reasons. I know we just had for everyone listening, if you didn't listen to episode 55 yet, we already had an interview kind of first of its kind with that one. And now we've got another one definitely going to be first of its kind here with Mr. Gietzen. Want to paint a little bit of context here too. First got connected with him through Nick Rodriguez, who is our president of the Liberland Aid Foundation. That'll kind of give you an idea of the direction we're heading with this conversation. Roger is working on some astounding projects around the world. He's calling in from South Korea today, which is a story within itself. I'm going to pause here for a moment for Roger just to introduce himself. But before we get into the meat of today's conversation, I also want to pick his brain a little bit on what traveling during COVID has been like. So, Roger, thank you so much for coming on the show. And do you have any opening remarks for our listeners?
Hey, Adam, thanks for having me. Yeah, I just would introduce myself as I'm a doctor who has a strong love to do humanitarian work, and have, as you already mentioned, a nonprofit called Global Freedom Project that's focused primarily in Haiti at the moment. I think that's the important information for the folks right now.
Sure. Yeah, so before the call, we were just, getting to know each other, and Roger had some interesting takeaways for what it's like, not only traveling right now during COVID, but going from, correct me if I'm wrong, from the US to Korea, where you are now. You went through a rigid 14-day quarantine. Just a few minutes here. Could you tell us what's it like traveling right now?
Yeah, it's like I was saying, there are some parts of travel that are really easy right now. The airports are empty. The flights are at least partially empty. And so in some senses, things go really smooth. I had no problem with my layover. Korea is definitely one of the more strict countries when it comes to your quarantine. And so I just went through a 14-day, almost the equivalent of a house arrest, where when you come in, you have to have a designated place you're gonna stay put. They download an app on your phone. They check in on you. They actually sent a government official multiple times to see that we're actually at the home. And fortunately, I was in the countryside, so I could get outside of those four walls and see nature in the garden. But a lot of people come in, are stuck in the city, and really are essentially in one room ordering takeout food for 14 days. And they do a test when you arrive and a COVID test on the day prior to being free. And that's how it is. If you ever were to want to travel in South Korea, you got to sacrifice those 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's, first time hearing any story like that. And, I guess I'm not surprised with just how serious things are like this around the world right now, but definitely, as Liberlandians, we're very passionate about our personal freedom and things of that nature. So it's kind of scary to hear that it's like that in certain parts of the world. All I can say is I hope, one day it's not quite as rigid.
Yeah. And the one thing I'll say that's good about Korea is once you get out of the quarantine, you have a lot of freedom. Actually, they don't have a lockdown like I did back in Michigan. They have very few in the way of businesses closed. And so they just really keep it tight to control entry of a potential virus. And then after that, there's more freedom than I was having before coming here.
In the U.S. So, interesting. Okay. Yeah. There you go.
But Michigan is a pretty strict state, though.
Was there any restrictions for you in the first place coming from the U.S., or is anyone from the U.S. able to travel there right now?
Anybody can travel if you do the quarantine.
Okay. Well, there you go, guys. If you're looking for a little switch up, consider Korea. I'm sure the tickets are a little bit discounted now too.
That's right.
So a little bit more about Roger. You mentioned he's a doctor. He's working on a Global Freedom Project, which I think you touched on lightly there. But if you could, just share with our listeners too about the inception of the project, where you got the inspiration to become the giver that you are today.
Well, there's a couple layers of inspiration. I mean, the first goes back to a time in my life where I had achieved like all my goals and dreams, pretty much the classic American dream, and realized I wasn't happy. I had a big house, great job, family, was living where I wanted to be, but something was missing. Over the course of a year after achieving all those goals, I realized that I had missed important spiritual lessons in my life and a focus on relationships. Made a lot of changes, and one of the changes that I found is really important for my happiness was helping people in need. And it started small, like just random acts of kindness and keeping my eyes out for people who need something and trying to keep myself in a position where I can help. And I would do that at home, also while traveling. And then in 2015, there was an opportunity for me to go to Haiti and do medical mission work, where I would teach neurology to Haitian physicians. And I really had this desire to go somewhere where things were the worst. I wanted to go where people were suffering the most and see if I could come up with some solutions. So that's how I chose Haiti. There happened to be a need for a neurologist. And so I started doing medical-based humanitarian work there, but on the weekends and after hours, I wanted to get to know the people more and also try to touch on some of the more root causes for poverty instead of just Band-Aid fixes with medications or surgeries.
Yeah. And that's an interesting direction that we're going to keep going here. But first, I do want to circle back to another story you shared before the call about some of your time in Cambodia and how you were able to impact the lives of, change someone's life for what sounded like, 200 or 300 US. What was that?
Yeah, yes. So during that transition time where I was developing a spiritual interest, I connected with my spiritual teacher who would do retreats wherever he happened to be and invited me to Cambodia. I was expecting the retreat where you'd sit and meditate in a mountain nature area, but that's not what happened. Actually, he would take me to like the city and say, bring some extra money and we're going to learn how to share and help the poorest people. With some guidance, I learned to recognize ways to really change people's lives with a single, small act of humanitarian work. And so one of the examples I talked to you about was helping the local bicycle-powered transportation folks. It's called a ciclo in Cambodia. These people work all day long, and 30% of their income they usually have to pay to rent their bikes, the bikes that they use. And I found out it costs about $300 for them to buy a good quality used bike. So I would search for kind of an older ciclo driver who would really appreciate the gift and who was clearly, invested in this career. And that was one of the first big giving experiences I did. Is I went for the ciclo drive, and at the end, I found somebody who could translate for me from English, and I gave that guy the $300 so that he could go buy his own new or used ciclo, which created this opportunity for financial independence. And I really felt like that had a big impact on me. I really felt good about myself compared to how quick I can spend $200 or $300 in the US and the happiness is all gone. I realized, okay, this is the where it's at. I want to do more things like this.
For sure. Yeah. And so there we go. This explains a lot of what you're doing in Haiti. I think you mentioned, since 2015, correct? You've been there?
That's right. Yeah.
So 5 years under your belt. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that's kind of where this bridge between your journey in Liberland first started coming together. So you mentioned Nick Rodriguez, Stefan Wood, and Joey Langenbrunner have spoken very highly of you. I think there's another name in there that I might be missing.
Steven too, yeah.
Steven, yes. All who I believe have been on the Liberland show, guys. Within the past, 4 episodes, we had the Liberland Aid Foundation on here too. So make sure you make a note to go check that episode out. But anyways, some synergy starting to happen, starting to come together. And that's because you're working on a project tied to regenerative farms. Could you share with with our listeners, what I don't even really know what the concept is. So paint the picture.
Yeah. So regenerative farming, I guess they could be defined in a lot of ways, but a simple way to say is that each time you farm with regenerative farming, the soil gets better. And it can be done in a way that actually all of the need for fertility and disease resistance is met right on the land. You can do it without inputs. So it's like many people are unaware that you can farm without bringing in fertilizers or herbicides or pesticides. Not only can you do it without bringing stuff in, but actually the soil gets better and better and better. Most people are shocked to believe that, but then if you point out to them in nature, the forest and the jungle isn't relying on an irrigation system or tons of chemical fertilizers, and yet it accomplishes everything and produces an abundance, then you start to open up your mind and say, well, gives me an idea of what's achieved in regenerative farming. Essentially, you're using natural mimicry and forming forest sort of systems on the farm to create the fertility, and then we're integrating into those the crops that need to be grown for people.
That brings me to a point where I might sidetrack us a little bit, but it does remind me of how you mentioned, no need for fertilizers, chemicals. It's kind of funny because I look at our bodies as humans, basically as a natural resource. And I've gone down this rabbit hole, if you will, of just researching how powerful our bodies are in healing themselves. We think we need, you're a doctor, so I really want to hear your take on this. We think we need all of these medications and things that'll fix us and make us better. We don't realize like our body is actually very capable of taking care of itself, just like this regenerative farming process. So am I onto something here? Is there anything similar?
Yeah, of course. I have a strong love of holistic medicine, and I do, after hours, I do mind, body, spirit counseling on the side, because I've come to see in my own life that the thoughts we carry, the way we arrange our life, the food we eat, the relationships we maintain, those are really foundational for our physical health and our emotional health, and that the ability to overcome a lot of diseases that are felt to be incurable is there, but people just don't realize that the disease is sort of a message or a warning that something needs to change in our life. And I feel the same way, that I feel like as long as you need a treatment, then you haven't really fixed the problem. And so I have like mixed feelings about the conventional medicine that I was trained in. I see that it helps a lot of people and there's a place for it, but I also see like a dependence on it, and people forget that these are short-term fixes. You can take a medicine to help with your mood, but what's really causing your emotional disturbance? And I encourage people to be open that it's more than just a chemistry problem in the brain.
Yeah,
and that it can be self-corrected.
It's kind of like with the concept of only treating the effects, not the cause.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, how can we tie this into regenerative farming? Is what I'm wondering.
Well, it's there are a lot of parallels, because conventional agriculture most people don't know it, but it leaves the soil more and more degraded year after year, and all the inputs, whether it's conventional organic, or conventional farming, require lots of inputs because health is missing on the farm. And so it's similar to modern day medicine, where you always have to take these pills and stuff because health is missing in the body. And so I think in both situations, go back to nature and learn from nature to establish health. And the stronger your health is, and the less you're dependent on these outward inputs.
I love it. Regenerative farming, we're getting into it deep here now. What does the future of the Liberland Aid Foundation and working with Global Freedom Project, what does that relationship look like, and where can we really make sure anyone listening and involved can make as big of an impact as possible?
So the way we connected is both myself and the Liberland Aid Foundation saw value in a specific type of regenerative farming called Syntropic Farming, which is inspired by a Swiss researcher farmer who lives in Brazil.
Wow.
And there's a great short video, like 15-minute video called Life in Syntropy, which I think is how we both developed this love of this technique. And I had watched that in 2016 and saw that Ernest had gone to Brazil and took land that farmers could no longer grow vegetables on. It had been forested, farmed, and then degraded. And only with hand tools and time and seeds He replanted that whole area. It looks like a thriving jungle right now. And it's a large area, like 500 hectares, if I remember correctly. And a portion of that land, like 7 hectares, is an active cacao plantation. And it's integrated right into the jungle. It does not look like there's anybody doing human activity there. And when I saw the video showing this large-scale ability to recover degraded land and feed people, there's even an influence he had on the microclimate. There was more rain, and the groundwater increased so that streams that would dry up in the dry season were running all year round. I was amazed. And for people who've been to Haiti would immediately know the value in this, because Haiti has suffered severe deforestation, and because of annual heavy rains, there's been severe soil erosion, so bad that it's killing off all the coral reefs out in the ocean around the island, because tons of soil and fertility every year gets washed down those rivers. And this was initial deforestation was because of the colonial period. All the mahogany and exotic woods were taken to Europe for money. Now it would have grown back had there not been 10 million severely devastated people who need wood for burning. They need wood for building, and a tree can't get more than the thickness of your wrist there without getting chopped down.
Wow.
And the first thing you come to the island, the first thing you see are just bald mountains. And many Haitians think that's how Haiti's always been. They don't even know or have a memory that this used to be a completely lush and jungle island nation, like it is on the other side of the island in the Dominican Republic.
Wow. Okay. So I'm going to make a note, guys. If I don't get Life in Syntropy, the video in the show notes, be sure to go check it out. It sounds very powerful. And I met someone about a year ago, not even, who was telling me about the connection between the prosperity of nations and the trees planted there. And it just sounds like, what? They're like, well, how? But when you hear what Roger's talking about and you look at a country that's in one of the worst conditions in the Western Hemisphere, that right there, it has a lot to do with it. And so there's a project I know I've heard called Trees for Peace. Are you involved with that by any chance?
That one I'm not. That's a separate project with Liberland.
Okay.
Sounds really good though. Yeah.
Yeah. So, man, powerful stuff, powerful information. I just want to reemphasize that, for anyone who's excited about contributing to what you're working on and what you potentially will be working on with us at Liberland, which is it's the regenerative farming, correct? That's the main focus?
That is the main focus.
What's the best way to keep up with Global Freedom Project and any progress that'll be made, especially in regards to, potentially donating? Right
now, the Global Freedom Project nonprofit has a Facebook page and a website that's under construction. It may even be up and running. That URL is actually active and redirects to the Facebook page. It's global-freedom-project.org, O-R-G. And so if they have that link, that'll either come right to a website, or it'll redirect to the Facebook page. And then there's a PayPal link. You can make a donation that way.
Perfect. There you go, guys. Yeah, Facebook. Certain things about Facebook been making people upset the past 5 years, but that's definitely been one cool thing, is the ease in donating.
Yeah. And I hope to be independent from that. It was a easy solution in the beginning to have a platform. For sure. And I think, if you're interested, definitely continue to have conversations with our guys in regards to donating through blockchain tech and through cryptocurrency. We were able to pull off a very helpful project with some individuals in Brazil due to the ease of transactions with Bitcoin Cash. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to help some of those in need during COVID. So all different kinds of ways to help around the world. And we're doing what we can to highlight it here on the Liberland Show. It's been an absolute honor having you on here, Roger. I'm happy our guys connected us. Before we close it out, yeah. Any closing remarks, or maybe even just life philosophy that you feel like you've kind of lived by, especially after going through this transformation period of your life? Yeah, I guess I'd go back to that first thing I said, which to you, but I don't know if I mentioned it on the show here, which is just make it a mindset to ask yourself when you go about, this is my philosophy when I go about my daily routine, Is there something I can do to help somebody? Is there somebody who I can see things are not going well for them today, and create some space and have a little extra in your life so you can stop and help people. And in the end, it'll come back around and help you for sure.
Couldn't have said it better. Love it. You know what? One more thing, going to kind of put you on the spot here, but any special messages for the Liberland Aid Foundation before they connect with you next time?
No, I'm looking forward to getting to know them better and having our relationship go deeper and having success in an educational program, which I didn't even mention. That's the main goal of our connection, is to take this method and make the education easily transmittable in Haiti. And so I'm looking forward to see how that all unfolds, and we have a plan all set, and now it's just one step forward at a time.
There we go. Got to speak it into existence. That's what we do here on the Liberland Show. I love it. Roger, one more time, thank you so much for coming on and joining us today.
My pleasure, Adam. Take care.
Yep. Guys, this has been episode 56 of the Liberland Show. We were joined today by Roger Gietzen, founder of Global Freedom Project. I'm your host, Adam J. Carswell. Thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you in the next episode. If you enjoyed the Liberland Show, be sure to check out my personal podcast as well, Dream Chasers, Interviews with the Future. A link to Dream Chasers is in the show notes. And lastly, if you've noticed, we do not have any ads here on the Liberland Show, and we intend to keep it that way. The production of the show is completely voluntary. I know for myself, it's a lot of fun. If you like what you hear, if you want more Liberland content to continue to come your way, don't worry, I got you, and I would really appreciate any type of donation whatsoever, just because that always puts a smile on my face too. So, donations can be sent to the Bitcoin or Ethereum receiving addresses below in the show notes. It's up to you guys on what your preference is. If you've never used Bitcoin or Ethereum, now's the perfect time to get your first action in the crypto market. Thanks again for tuning in, and like we always say, we will catch you in the next episode.